We're recording.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of Tuesday, June 7th, 2022 to order. Both Mayor Bussey and Councillor House and Member Getz tonight couldn't be here. Item point 2, public input. The meeting is open to statements from no more than 5 members of the public, no more than 2 minutes in length each. And a reminder to applicants tonight, you will have an opportunity to speak when your application comes up on the agenda. Hearing no public input, we move to item 3, approval of the agenda, including late additions and deletions. Can I get a motion to put this on the floor that June 7th, 2022 regular council meeting agenda be adopted? Okay, Councillor Reid, Councillor Buckland, are there any errors and omissions? Favor? Item 4, delegations. We do have a delegation from the SLRD and the LAPS committee regarding a service area proposal, and I believe it is Melody who's speaking.
Yes.
All right. Go ahead. Hello.
Good evening. Thank you very much for accommodating us on your agenda this evening. Really appreciate that. It's good to see everyone. We are here today to speak to the Lillooet Agriculture and Food Society service establishment. This comes out of the initiative from back in 2014 when there was work completed by a working group, and it led to the agricultural plan, which was a 2-part plan, looking at the current state of agriculture in Lillooet and area at that time. And the second part, which made a series of recommendations around what could be done to support agriculture as a significant economic driver in Lillooet and area. One of those recommendations was that the working group should evolve and that something should be established to ensure continued implementation of the agricultural plan. And the local governments and the First Nations governments did not have the individual capacity for any of those organizations to take the lead. And a third-party organization also has the ability to collaborate with all of the government jurisdictions. So the Lillooet Agriculture and Food Society came into being and was actually established in 2016. And they've been active ever since with moving forward in implementing the different recommendations that were outlined in the agricultural plan. The agricultural plan was a joint initiative. Certainly the District of Lillooet was a significant valued partner in the full process, as were the Northern Statliam communities. And the intent was that this would be a collaborative initiative. What's happened since then is that funding through discretionary grants has been provided by the Electoral Area B Director, and I do believe I did see Director Birch Jones in the room there. We can turn this over to her if she has any additional information for yourselves. The board has passed a series of resolutions in support of looking into service establishment. And now we've reached the point, things kind of got put on hold a little bit due to COVID, but we've now picked up the ball and begun to move this process forward. And one of the first important priorities for us at the SLRD is to find out the District of Lillooet's position on participating in such a service. So the staff report which is a part of your board agenda, included a resolution from November of 2021 that the District of Lillooet be invited to be a participant in the service establishment. From a financial perspective, electoral area B alone, it could not handle the financial costs associated with taxing only Area B residents. So the District of Lillooet's position on whether you have an interest in participating in this service would be a critical component for us in knowing whether to proceed with a proposed service establishment bylaw. There is also, as a part of that resolution, an invitation to Northern Statlium communities to be involved. The SLRD has no ability to requisition taxes for First Nations lands and for the reserve lands, but wants to leave the door open with a presumption neither that those First Nation communities will want to be participating in some way or that they won't, but to really leave an open door of an opportunity and an invitation to have their continued collaboration and involvement in agriculture in the area. So the service establishment process, if it were to proceed, would there's more than one way it could proceed. The recommendation of staff would typically be to send it back to yourselves for consideration as a municipal council, and the municipal council could then make a pass a resolution on behalf of the electorate as to how to proceed. That decision rests first with the SLRD board as to whether it would be referred to yourselves or if the SLRD board would do the full service area. If it's referred to yourselves, then you could simply consider the matter and pass a resolution, or you could choose one of the other options for determining the will of the electorate for service establishment. In terms of the anticipated cost, it's expected that it would be not a large cost, but certainly every dollar counts. The amounts are included in the staff report as to how much has been provided in the past years for discretionary funds. That's on page 3 of the staff report. And the estimation is that it would be approximately $5 for a $100,000 home or $25 for a $500,000 home for each of the people who would be a part of the participating area based on the what their particular assessment would be. So I think that basically outlines really we had this go to the area, the Agriculture Advisory Committee for Area B earlier today, and the Agriculture Advisory Committee was very supportive of this moving forward. They passed a resolution of support, and we're eager to hear what the District of Lillooet's decision and inclination would be as to whether there's support for this to go forward. I know it's an important thing in your area, but it's fully at your discretion what you as a council would like to see happen, and we're very receptive to any questions you may have, any additional information you might be looking for, and interested to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. There are questions for Melanie? Absolutely.
I just have one, either Melanie or Vivian. I know it was brought up at our medic meeting that we did not need Northern Statlium buy-in, but I'm just curious as to whether there's been a conversation with them. I hate down the road to find out that we didn't follow some kind of protocol, so to speak, whether they buy in or don't buy in. And I believe at the NEDIC meeting, there hadn't been a conversation since 2020. So I could have that wrong. Could either one of you answer that?
I think Melanie, if I may, probably,
So the microphone can hear you.
there's a microphone here? Okay. If I may, Melanie, we have been working with the Stabian communities on an ongoing basis and doing things like offering workshops. We, by the way, have Sarah Petznick and Emily Jones here, sort of for content experts. Sarah's the outgoing executive director with LAFS, and Emily is our new one. So they can answer skill testing questions about what agriculture and food. But on the political level, we are trying very hard to get onto the tribal council's agenda, and I think we're going to be on in July. And we have sort of some casual and positive projects that have happened, but we're going to make sure that it doesn't come as a surprise. And in fact, today at our AAC, we thought a letter to all chiefs and council, and then asking again to be invited to present. And because, I mean, partly with COVID and just the last few strange years, some of our relationships have been a bit patchy. I mean, that's an important part of this. The district of Lillooet, though, comes first and foremost.
That's awful.
Don't sit down, Vivian. So I just wanted to ask, with the $25 per $500,000 home, so it would go on taxes, on a tax base. First of all, how does that affect the businesses? And would that amount vary if you had more participants?
The amount?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Melanie. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Happy to take that question. And we can play tag here if you're happy with that. Yeah, so the businesses at a regional district, we actually have a lockstep ratio as to how taxes are calculated for residential and businesses. It's not a floating amount that's set each year like it is in municipalities. So the businesses would also be a part of the taxation, as would industrial or utility. That would all be set as part of that process. So there would be an impact to businesses as well, but the ratio spread is not as significant as it is in a municipal world.
Okay, so if the businesses pay, say, 3.2% more than the residential, would they be paying like $75, $80 a year? Would it be prorated like that?
It would be based on their assessed value as well.
Okay.
So if you own a business and a residence, you pay twice? I'm sorry,
It would-
discussion has to stay with.
Yeah. So it's very similar to all of the other regional district. What we tax, we send a requisition to the province, and the province actually collects it for us. And it's different than in the municipal world, but it's the same in the sense that all of the different people who would potentially benefit would pay into that. And where you would now have a line item on your tax notice for regional district, what's collected, that amount would be in there, whether you're residential or whether you're business. Does that answer the question?
It does a bit. So is that a set amount too, or is that able to increase as we want, or as LAFS wants, or is that just going to be a set amount?
Yeah, so that would be part of the annual budget process, which the SLRD goes through every year. the groups submit their requests to the Director of Finance. The Director of Finance brings all those requests before the board, and Director Weeb, who sits on our board, speaks to any matters that have an impact on the District of Lillooet as to whether she's supportive or not of those particular proposals. And then that's for all of the services. So you have other services that the District of Lillooet participates in. So it would be that full roster of services are reviewed on an annual basis to make a determination of which ones get how much money. And sometimes there's a negotiation back and forth depending on what's asked and what's required. But one of the things we would be doing with the service establishment, if the District of Lillooet is supportive in principle, and if this proceeds, would be to establish a maximum. So there would be a maximum set, and that couldn't be revisited without going back to the electorate, which would include the District of Lillooet and Area B, to increase that maximum. So that would be capped for this particular service for a 5-year period.
Vivian?
And those figures are actually in your package, including what we've been funding through payment in lieu of taxes for the past few years. Because Director Macri, bless him, was so proud of this plan, and he immediately funded for the society to kind of get going. I mean, they didn't form immediately, they formed in 2015, I think. And became their own entity, and the amount that they've requested, I think the annual amounts, it was sort of between 25,000 a year to 32,000 a year, and there's a ceiling set there, best estimate being 40 to carry us through the next 5 years, depending. But you will also see in the package that those amounts have been leveraged incredibly by Lillooet Agriculture and Foods, bringing in other funds to make some pretty rich budgets over the last few years. That's brought a lot of money and activity into the sector and into the community.
Thanks, Vivian. I have a question to staff. And maybe to tag along, Melanie can follow up with it too. Is this something that will have to go through our strategic planning and obviously then go through our budget process? I would assume for us, I know this was originally supposed to come to a committee of the whole, and we pushed it into a delegation for time constraints. But like, I'm wondering what's the timeline for the SLRD to get the feedback, and then once they get the feedback and then the SLRD board approves it, coming back to us, would it then go through the strategic planning and budget this fall? That makes sense?
I would say no, it doesn't. This is an SLRD-led initiative. If council happens to decide to focus on this service as well, then we can certainly look at opportunities for running things parallel or supporting SLRD. But correct me if I'm wrong, but it very much is an SLRD initiative. It's more of a legislative process that we're going through to authorize as a member of the SLRD to participate in this funded, but it's not something that would have an impact on district staffing resources.
Looks like Joni has comments.
Sorry, through the mayor, acting mayor. Just further on what Jeremy's saying, that SLRD sends us a requisition for a set amount of dollars that they require we collect from our property owners. That doesn't form any real part of our budget discussions because it's an in and out for us. We charge the property owners and we submit it to the SLRD.
Councilor Weeb?
Yes, through our acting mayor. I always forget that part. Is this the only way it can be done, is through a service establishment? Or I guess I'm going to ask staff, could it be a set amount that is put in our budget rather than in taxation? I'm just curious on that and how that works on a service, establishing a service agreement.
If it was an initiative that council wanted to make a District of Lillooet thing, then certainly we could, excuse me, include it in our budget discussions. But the net impact to taxpayers would be the same, whether we're collecting it on behalf of the SLRD or we're collecting it on behalf of the District of Lillooet. There wouldn't be a difference in the effect on our taxpayers.
Follow-up question, Councillor Lee?
I'm,
So, I mean, maybe I'm just guessing.
okay, I'm not really grasping. I hate to add more taxes to more taxes. As a taxation base, adding more ratios and this, that, and the other. So I'm thinking of the existing budget that we have today. Taxes have been collected, hopefully. Is it possible to do it where the district gives money directly to LAFS? Or is that a off the table thing? Does it have to be done through a service agreement and a taxation? I mean, I love the program, so I'm very positive on that note. I remember it coming up at our intergovernmental meetings and the NEDIC meetings way back before COVID and Zoom and all the other things we went through. But I don't know that it ever really set with me that it would be a taxation. I was more on the basis of Area B gives this much, LAFS works on this many grants. Does it have to be done as a service agreement, I guess, is my question.
My view on that is no, it wouldn't have to be. I mean, there's always the option of each municipality either entering into more of a contractual type agreement with the regional district, collecting taxes as joint, so we collect the taxes and then through that legal agreement, provide funding, or for the municipality and the regional district to enter into separate agreements with LAFS, corporate nature. That comes out of our general revenue through the budgeting process and all that. Downside of that is there's more staff overhead for each of the participating municipalities and local governments, regional government, because we're having to now coordinate in what is effectively siloed agreements. The net cost may be close to the same, but it may actually be more because now there's an increased staff overhead to manage that. And as well, there's, I would say, increased risk of instability in that program as priorities change, councils, which is the reality of each community. LAFS as a service provider wouldn't necessarily be able to plan longer term. Right now, if this went forward, they would have at least 5 years to plan their strategy out. If it were an agreement with an out clause, which they typically have in a legal agreement, there may be a cancellation that could occur from one of the municipalities. Now the program could unravel in the coming years, which could then risk what was the point of providing the funding. So it's about stability and lower overhead.
I think LAFS has done a wonderful job. Another follow-up question then. If you did have buy-in from the Northern Statlium, would those tax figures change? Or would they remain the same and just more funding would go into LAFS?
Yes, I can take a stab at that. Thank you. So we're going to build the service establishment bylaw, if it proceeds, with options for other funding sources. So there could be other grants or gifts. There could be money that's provided by way of agreement. So if any of the Northern Statlium communities wanted to participate in a financial way, that would certainly be available to them. And then the overall ask for the year would be, so all the money would go into the pot, the same as they do for the municipal services, and the amount that would need to be requisitioned by taxation would be a smaller number. And the same would apply if there were other grant funds available. Let's say Northern Development Initiative Trust had a great grant that was a perfect fit for LAFS and that funded part of their operating costs for the year. Again, the same thing would apply, that when that budget is decided on, all of those funding sources would go in the pot, and the only amount that would be requisitioned is the amount that is required in order to operate the service for the year.
Okay, thank you. Like I say, I think LAFS does a wonderful job. I remember Sarah at the first meeting, this young little thing with, yeah, and you're still a young little thing, but that's up too. It's just, you know, I remember all of these things and how far the society has gone. So, thank you.
Any more questions? So what would council like to do? Do we want to put a motion on the table to support this, or to take it back to staff to, sorry, help me out here, Mr. Taylor.
Melanie, if I may, what was the takeaway you were looking from this evening? I wasn't sent a resolution for them to adopt. Are you looking for general support to carry on with the bylaw with the SLRD board? Or are you actually looking for a commitment today, at which point I would likely recommend the council speak with their CFO?
It's a general sense of the position of the District of Lillooet. If the District of Lillooet was like, we want no part in participating in such a service, that would mean that there's no sense in staff investing in developing and presenting a bylaw for the SLRD board's consideration of first 3 readings. If the District of Lillooet is generally supportive in principle and would like to see more information, then what we will do is we'll go away as staff and draft the bylaw, bring it to the SLRD board for consideration, and formally send it through to yourselves to present to Mayor and Council, the same as we did with the amendment to the Camel's Foot. And that will be the staff recommendation. There's 2 potential routes. The SLRD board can decide to proceed with all of the service area in the proposed bylaw, or they can refer the municipal portion to yourselves and deal with each participating area, being Lillooet and Area B, separately. The recommendation of staff would be to present the municipal portion to yourselves for consideration, because that's the least costly route and most efficient route, and that would allow more dollars to go directly into the hands of LAFS rather than to the administrative overhead costs associated with service establishment. So and hopefully that helps as some background. So really, we're just looking for a general sense of your position on this, and we'll action that accordingly. Thank you.
That's not full.
So I really think that the LAFS has a great program here. My only concern is, like Councillor Weebs, is the taxes and the $25 per 500, based on the fact that our assessments are going through the roof, and the price of gas and food and everything else. I don't want to really dump, you know, another $50 a year onto residents. So I am interested in hearing more about it, but I cannot promise that I will be voting in favor of upping the taxes like a parcel tax. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. What I would recommend at this point, in order to not commit yourselves or the district to anything, is not a resolution, but just an informal consensus vote, where it's same called as a regular resolution vote, but it's non-binding. It would at least give Ms. Helmer the ability to move forward with finding that new information, taking it forward to the SLRD board to see if they're even interested in the bylaw themselves, at which point all that information will come back to council. They cannot pass one of these bylaws without your consent, so it will come back to you before that happens.
So if we want to give for our general support for this and comes of it. I think that's what we're. Okay, thank you, Melanie.
Does that work for you, Ms. Helmer? General support for that?
That's wonderful. Thank you all very much for your time this evening and for consideration.
Have a great evening.
You too. Thank you.
All right, so item 6, the adoption of the minutes. We please move that the April 20th, 2022 regular council meeting minutes be adopted as presented. Councilor Reid, Councilor Rockford, are there any errors or omissions to them? No. And please call the vote. All in favor? Councilor Rockford, Councilor Reid. And then item 2, that the May 3rd, 2022 regular council meetings be adopted as presented. Reid, Rockford. And is there any errors or omissions on that? Okay, vote all in favor. Okay, carried. So there's no business arising from the minutes. There's no rise in report. So number 9, correspondence and petitions. Is there any correspondence that the council wish to remove for discussion? Is it helpful?
I would like to remove 2022 0513 MP Bradford, this wildfire letter.
Okay.
Move that back.
Okay, and that's 18. So that will be moved to section 18 new business, so 18.1. All right, so that item number 2022.5 MP. Oh, sorry, Councilor Reid.
That's okay.
Okay,
I would like to pull the Lillooet Indigenous Sports Steering Committee.
that will go to 18.2. Okay. Anything else? So that item, I'm just going to say the name because they're not numbered tonight. Okay, so that the MP this and the Indigenous Courts invite letters be removed from the correspondence report for discussion under section 18 new business of the June 7th, 2022 regular council meeting, and that the remaining correspondence included in the information report dated June 7th, 2022 be received for information. All those in favor? Carried. Right. Item 10, reports from committees of council and commissions. So 10.1, spring 2022 Lillooet Community Fund community recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. On May 16th, the Lillooet Community Fund met for its spring session to consider applications made to the community fund. 3 applications were made totaling $3,000 of total grant funding requested from the current fund balance of $6,200.07. The Lillooet Community Fund is capable of funding nonprofit organizations located in Lillooet for up to $1,000 each that represent a maximum of 50% of project costs. Applicants must be volunteer or service organizations of Lillooet, projects that focus on social, cultural, artistic, educational, or recreational activities, that encourage broad community support and participation, that are self-sustaining, that help create and strengthen community network between neighbors and organizations, and for new initiatives and not for ongoing operational expenses, with priority given to non-annual events and new initiatives. The 3 applicants this year that are being recommended by the Community Fund are the Lillooet District Historical Society, seeking funding for equipment to assist in digitization of visual artifacts in accordance with museum archiving requirements for $1,000. The Just Do It Sports Society, seeking funding for sports equipment for youth activities for $1,000. And the Lillooet District Chamber of Commerce, seeking funding for the training opportunities to both membership and community members in participation with Thompson River University. The committee reviewed all 3 applications and after some clarification from the Historical Society on their request are recommending that council that all 3 be approved in their entirety. They are also asking that Councillor Hopful be permitted to issue the checks independent of the council meeting, as the next regular council meeting is a month and a half away. Thank you.
Right, are there any comments or questions? All right, can we just vote as read, okay? So, all in favor of the recommendations as read?
Sorry, I need a mover and a second.
Oh, move, Councillor Reid, Councillor Hopwell. All in favor? Carried. Item 11, reports and presentations from staff. The RFD 2021 annual report. And this is going to Ms. Silver.
Thank you. Yes, through the acting mayor. Hopefully this is the last financial report for a little while for you guys. The 2021 annual report, as I'm sure you're all aware, is required to be approved by council. It sort of incorporates all of the other financial reporting that we do, our SOFI report and our audited financial statements. This is the report that is submitted to the GFOA, which we were successful again last year for the 4th year in getting the award for. As required by legislation, the report has to be available excuse me, to the public for 14 days before council considers it. As such, we did post the report to our website and Facebook page on May 9th. And the availability was, advertised in the Bridge River Lillooet News on May 18th and 25th. We and council has to consider any questions or comments from the public, of which I have received none to this time. So staff does recommend that council consider and approve the 2021 annual municipal report as presented.
Get a mover. You come helpful. And up, Councillor Hopwell. No, okay.
That's a rough thing to tell.
All right, so let's call the vote. All those in favor? Carried. And so 11.2, the RFD Municipal and Regional District Tax, Caribou Coast Tourism Marketing Association.
So this is actually a request from the CCCTA to renew an existing relationship and agreement that's already in place. It is covered in the report, and there's a rather lengthy 5-year plan for them attached to the report. So, page summary. The key elements I'll cover here right out of their summary documents is in the last chunk of time, they've spent $2.5 million, which is actually leveraged $4.4 million in marketing in our region, Caribou Coast region. Online, they've had over 250 million eyeballs looking at their marketing. They've had over 105,000 direct referrals to tourism businesses, 1 million website visits, over 27,000 emails sent out and looked at, and over 20 million television impressions across 15 million commercial venues. So they're definitely having an impact out there. And so they're requesting that the funding agreement, which is actually not affecting the district's budget at all, is that the tourism accommodation vendors collect up to 3% tax. That's what it is for CCTA, is they collect 3% directly from say hotels and Airbnbs, and that money collected by the province gets directed to this tourism association, which then markets for all. Would be if council agrees to renew it, would be in effect for another 5 years. And then every 5 years they come back to council and ask if the council wants to continue working with them. They have received letters from the majority of accommodators, and all those that they've heard back from have supported continuing this relationship because they're finding
questions?
Through the acting mayor. When you say that they've heard back from hotels, motels, whatever, I'm assuming that's in the whole Caribou, Chipotle region. So do we have any figures on exactly what goes out of Lillooet and what comes in? Like how many people in the industry here in Lillooet have bought into this and how many, you know that?
I haven't received the specifics for Lillooet or the region here, but accommodators are represented on our economic development advisory group, which works with our economic development zone. And they are all in support of it from those who are involved in it. So it is anecdotal at this point. But the CCTA does need majority support from all participants and from the municipality in order to move forward. So if they weren't getting majority support from overall their members in the municipality, we would hear about it. And from that advisory committee meeting, it was pretty clear from the conversation, which was quite a robust conversation about the alternative to this is we try to go it alone. And the funding you could imagine of the few hotels and Airbnbs we have just can't compete with vast input of revenue from the CCTA. The city of Gwinnell actually tried this to go it alone, and they are going back into the CCTA because they simply could not be. So there's other organizations, there's like Vancouver Island, one Vancouver, one Thompson Oakland, so there's a bunch of really big ones. They have the resources to really have them. So it's either go it alone with a few $100 a year to work with, or we work with the whole organization. And so one thing that did come out of that conversation with that advisory committee is the businesses locally, the Chamber of Commerce, the district itself, need to be vocal about being represented. So even reviewing what the CCTA has on their website right now in their campaigns, I've noticed gaps in it. I've submitted information to them, they're right on top. They can only do for us what we ask them to. So I think the business community here is sort of being rejuvenated through the chamber, realizing they have a voice and they need to be heard.
Thank you. Yes, I think we have a very robust chamber working right now. I'm all for it.
Any comments? All right, can I get a mover and a seconder that the continued inclusion of the District of Lillooet in the Caribou Chicoutimi Coast Tourism Marketing Association's Municipal and Regional District Tax Initiative for the application of renewal effective 2023 to 2028 be supported? Council helpful? Question on favor? Carried. All right, so on to item 12, bylaws and resolutions. So the participating area approval for the Campbellsford TV and radio rebroadcasting transmission service establishments. Bylaw number 1214, 2011, amendment bylaw number 1771, 2022.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. SLRD amendment bylaw number 1771-2022 is to amend the service area establishment bylaw, the Lillooet Campbellsford Television and Radio Broadcasting Service Area. This amendment is simply to remove a small portion of electoral area B from the service that has been contributing to the service area, but due to the nature of radio waves is unable to receive the service due to topography. As Lillooet is party to the service area, the regional board must get consent to amend the bylaw. As per the Local Government Act, if an amendment is proposed to a service area and the participating area includes the entirety of the municipality, the council may give participating area approval by consenting on behalf of the electors to adopting the proposed bylaw and notifying the board of its consent. The proposed bylaw does not propose to increase the maximum requisition amount that the regional district can require for this service. Thank you.
Do we have questions? Questions first? No? I'm confused now. Do we have a mover and a seconder to put it on the table? Council Hopple, you have any questions, concerns? So we,
I don't have any questions or concerns. I just really want to commend our Area B director for the work and having sat in on this over the months with the SLRD. I just truly, she has done a wonderful job and really stepped up to the plate to get this sorted out in the best possible way for all concerned. So thank you.
all right, ready to call the question, all those in favor? Carried. All right, so item 12.2 DBP 2022-002, 137 and 141 Moran Place, Timber Mart. Vinegar, sorry, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. DBP 22-002 is a request to vary the minimum required number of commercial parking spaces, vary the requirements for an oil water separator, and vary the surfacing requirements. These paving requirements are triggered by an addition built onto an existing structure at 137 Main Street and a retail greenhouse structure built at 141 Miranda Place. That's 137 Miranda. These changes of use and increase of occupiable floor area mean that the parking request of the current parking requirements of the current zoning bylaw apply. The bylaw requires that off-street parking in commercial loading areas must be surfaced with asphalt, concrete, or permeable drivable surface such as, but not limited to. That's what I'm trying to do. Juggling a bunch of balls here. Such as, but not limited to, forest pavers, cobblestones, turf block, and honeycomb grid. General reasons for paving include the aesthetics, sound, it is generally quieter than driving across gravel, dust and mud control, general maintenance, weight ratings for emergency vehicles, snow and ice clearing. It is fairly apparent from the options given in this section that the community did not want to absolutely require asphalt or concrete to be paving options, which is why the alternate surfacing options were given. From this, staff can only surmise that the intent was to phase out the proliferation of gravel parking areas, at least within the core of the district. Speaking to the reduction of parking, this was done after a conversation with staff and the owner over a previous proposal to straddle the parking between the lots of 137 and 141 Moran by having the spaces over the property line. This is not ideal as it can result in a de facto loss of parking if either of the properties were sold without the other, and the district would have required a reciprocal parking agreement be registered on the title of both properties and then enforced if the property ever went up for sale. The loss of 2 parking spaces, which still accounts for a net increase of the overall off-street parking for the entire Timber Mart operation, is still beneficial, where the business has been using almost exclusively municipal street parking on Miranda Place. Finally, staff have received clear direction from council to research the need for oil water separators during the next review of the zoning bylaw, which is currently underway. While there is benefit to their installation, the current bylaw's all or nothing approach on this particular item may be a little heavy-handed. Staff are recommending that the variance request for the parking reduction in the oil water separator be approved and that the request to vary the surfacing requirements be denied. Feedback received on this item was there was one piece of public feedback opposing varying the requirements to pave and supports varying the requirements for the oil water separators. Madam Acting Mayor, at this point, it is appropriate to invite anyone who feels that their interests are affected by this variance to speak, starting with the applicant.
Is the applicant available to speak today?
It is not a requirement.
It's not a requirement.
Sorry. Thank you very much.
I'll just get you to state your name first.
I'm Joyce Harder, part owner of Timber Mart. and really take exception to the requirement to have paved parking in a basically an industrial area. We spoke with mayor and a councillor about a year and a half ago, and I believe it was from that meeting that I got the impression that the bylaws that were implemented rather hurriedly some few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, were to be revised. And that in fact, a lot of the requirements that are in the bylaws now are, as the gentleman just said, rather heavy-handed. We're a small community in the interior of British Columbia. We're trying to survive with businesses that are doing their utmost, the best they can to keep the community viable. Making these kinds of requirements of small businesses is, in my mind, is too much. We are downtown Lillooet. We are not downtown New York City. If customers were coming to us complaining that there was too much dust, too much noise, too much movement of soil under the wheels, I think that businesses would listen to their customers. But to have absolutely imposed upon by council the requirement of paving for a greenhouse, I think is, I believe it should be waived. It was interesting, I was driving to Kamloops this morning, had the radio on, and I'd heard mention that council really doesn't have a great deal of say in overruling what the administration says. And it just so happened that on the radio, they played a section of last night's council meeting in Kamloops where a variation to a bylaw had been declined by staff. Proposition was made by the individual, and the councillors responded that with all due respect for the knowledge and understanding of the bylaws as they are written, but in this instance, the council was going to overrule the administration and allow the variance to that bylaw. So that the option is there for council to do that, and I would request that council seriously consider the position of business people. As Councillor Hopful indicated, the taxes and the costs of everything that are going up, and to impose this in a situation that really doesn't need it and has operated significantly well without the paving. I just request that that variance be allowed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
For those of you who are new to the community, you may not know Joyce. She was mayor for 8 years. She was 2-time term DBCM chairman. So she's very knowledgeable. She was the mayor when this building was built.
You have to identify yourself.
Sorry. Can you just identify yourself? Just identify yourself for the.
So Joyce was mayor when this building was built. And I just wonder whether this type of project would even get off the ground today. Really, it took a lot of vision, a lot of foresight, bending some rules, and the input of a huge number of volunteer work from the community. There's no question that there's been some ups and downs with this building, but I think the overall it's been a benefit to the community. So, I just wanted to thank Joyce for showing up. I put her on the spot by putting her speaking first, but she's a shareholder in the business. And we've been business partners for 40 odd years.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this application? Hearing none, we I would like to say, before I open it up to the councilors, that I do hear what the applicants are saying. And I understand the precedent that was set with the neighboring property at the brewery. And from that, I would actually like to see a plan in the applicant and to communicate to staff that some landscaping, that needs to be presented in these applications. So I have no problem with varying the first 2 points, but I would actually like to defer the request to vary the servicing requirements to the next meeting when we have a full council, and give staff the opportunity to go back to the applicants and be clear about the expectation that we have when coming forward with an application. The brewery's application was very thorough. It had a business plan about what they were wanting to do tied into their business plan. They had drawings about what landscaping was going to look like and what they wanted to do to it other than just paving. So I think that as a business community in general, if we set a standard for business improvement that benefits us in the future, while also giving these applications an opportunity to look at other options. So that is a motion I would like to put on the floor. If I could get a movement on that, I would appreciate that. Councilor Weed.
I would move that wholeheartedly, and in the discussion, I would like it to be not necessarily paved, but some kind of be it recycled asphalt. I don't know where that conversation could go. I just think that things move forward slowly and we have to start somewhere. And it's a light industrial area, not an industrial area. And it's very close to commercial area as well. I'm fine with the oil separator being taken out. I think we've had that conversation about the bylaw. And I'm fine with the parking requirements because people aren't parked there all day, and I get that. But as far as the paving, I think we need to have a further discussion, and I think we need a full table here to have it.
So I'm good with the 7 stalls because I go in there, I park, I go to both places. I'm not utilizing these stalls for parking other than one stall. Oil water separator needs to be taken out. But I don't think it should be required to have paving in industrial zone. I think that, and I disagree with the fact that they have to have flowers and beautification and that kind of thing, or present it in a better way or form. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter how people present it. It doesn't matter how they say it. It doesn't matter how they get up here and say what they want to say. It matters that we're talking about a paving for a business in an industrial zone. Commercial is different. That was not, you know, when we talk about commercial, that's our downtown core, that's different. This is industrial. This business has flowers hanging out there. They have it. It's a garden area. It does look beautiful. And I think that when the brewery came, yes, they made it they did a very good presentation. But that doesn't mean that everybody has to do a very good presentation. We are to represent people in all forms of whatever they have, and it should be based on criteria of, are we paving in industrial zones?
So to further that, I agree on some points. So what I agree on is that setting a standard for what we expect and whether or not it's paving. I would like to remind this council table that it was both previous council members sitting here with me tonight that passed that bylaw that required the oil separator, the parking, and the paving. So I would like to have staff go back and from this conversation and have a better idea of what we are looking for as a whole council to not only go forward with this application and the other applications, but also in the future until we get that new zoning bylaw. And it will give staff a base of what that new zoning bylaw needs to look like as he's writing it. Because I do believe Mr. Taylor is currently writing as he goes through applications on a daily basis. So that's where I'm going with this. I'm not saying they have to pave. I'm saying let's set a standard and have a matrix of what we expect. That's it. And that's why I would like to defer that particular piece. And I think that that's fair to applicants because we're not denying it. So they have to reapply again, which we have a reapplication for 108 Main because we denied it last time. So I feel that this is a compromise on both parts to get this issue of our zoning bylaw sorted out. So I'm not disagreeing with you and I'm not saying no, I'm saying let's flesh this out so we don't have this issue come up every time.
Well, I'm a little unclear of what you're at. So in the last one that was approved by all of us, you're saying set a standard. Are you saying the brewery one that we all approved?
Yes.
Okay, and then the other one that what did not get passed, I did support the not paving in that. So I just want to make that clear. I don't believe that we should be paving in industrial zones and I don't care what that kind of looks like.
And I think going forward, as the business community continues to develop and grow, because we can't deny that we're not seeing growth here, it will only benefit long-term. It's an investment in the business property and the business and the community as a well-rounded whole. That's where I'm going with this. And
The acting mayor. I guess I'm agreeing with you that it be deferred and taken back and a standard be set because yes, both Councillor Hopeful and I were on the council that approved the bylaw that it would be paid. And now we're turning around doing whatever, making ourselves look like fools or that we cannot make a decision or pick a lane. Because we were on that note a few years back and now every time something comes up, we're in this discussion. So I like the idea of deferring it along with a few more just to get that basis of what exactly we want to do and what exactly we want to see, rather than just passing it to say that's fine and then another one comes up and we're in the same situation. I just think it needs to be, keep it in the lanes here. Like we need to get it figured out and we need to do it quickly.
I want to add to that too, is every time a DVP comes up, it is extra staff time. If staff had a clear direction on what council wanted, there would be a lot of time saved and a lot of money, taxpayers' money saved. And our time sitting here, right? Yep, Council.
So just to go back on yours with prior council and for the sake of a good argument, yes, we may have passed that, but it was on Main Street. And I think that our idea of Main Street didn't pertain to the industrial. Our mistake, I still don't think of that as Main Street. I think of our beautification and our standards for Main Street being our downtown core because it's what our expectations are. And that, so yeah, and to me, it's a no-brainer. So I don't think there should be but whatever. I mean, I'm gonna get outvoted on this, so.
Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. What I would recommend at this point is if council does want staff to go back and have a conversation with the applicant, is to move option 5 at the end of the staff report, which is to refer to staff for other options. I wouldn't recommend trying to break this up into 2 separate approvals. Just send the whole item back to staff. We will bring the whole variance report back again once we've had a conversation with the applicants, addressing some of the concerns that have come up from council.
Great, so I would like to, do I have to go back on the motion because I got a.
There wasn't technically a seconder
Okay.
on that one, so it's not.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion to defer this applicant to the next council meeting. To
Sorry,
recommend-
refer to staff.
We're just
for other-
refer to staff for other options.
Yeah, I wanted to say.
Counselor moves it. Do I have a seconder? Can I second it? I'll second that. All those in favor? Okay, all those opposed? Thank you. Great. So item 12.3. BBG 22-003, 342 Hollywood Crescent, a variance for frontage requirement and road improvement.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. DDP 22-003 is a request to vary the minimum frontage for a panhandle subdivision, as well as a few of the frontage improvements currently required by the SDS bylaw. At an RR1 zoned property located at 342 Hollywood Crescent. Section 33.2A of the zoning bylaw describes that no lot in any proposed subdivision may have less than 10% of the perimeter fronting a highway. The owners have applied to vary the minimum frontage from 10% to 2.0% to enable the creation of a panhandle lot. I would mention at this point that the 10% frontage is a requirement of legislation and often makes its way into zoning bylaws and doesn't take into account lots. Section 6.5 of the Subdivision and Development Servicing Bylaw states that paved roads and lanes, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, underground wiring, and streetlights are required in the urban area. However, the bylaw does not define the boundaries of the urban area. Prior to the adoption of the 2020-2040 official community plan, staff would not have been supporting the creation of panhandle lots, as they generally create barriers to greater densification by adding odd shapes, lots, and a lot of unusable panhandle area. However, through the public engagement process, it was determined that the community would not be considering a sanitary service extension up to the hot farm, effectively making the minimum lot size 2,000 square meters, or roughly half an acre, which is the prescribed minimum lot size when a lot is on municipal water, but on a private septic system. Seeing as this policy direction will limit the density on the hot farm, there is little reason to continue to try to hold these lands in reserve for more intensive development, and panhandles become a supportable subdivision in this part of town. With regards to the requirements for a paved walkway and gravel shoulder, the District Public Works Department supported the requested variance from the Subdivision and Development Servicing Bylaw to not require paved walkway in the hot farm neighborhood. As a rural neighborhood, it may be considered unreasonable to require sidewalks to be constructed on short property frontages without a fulsome sidewalk master plan to connect and build sidewalks throughout the whole neighborhood. Again, given that the density is now likely to at a maximum double, there may not be sufficient reason to continue the requirement for sidewalks. And this is being taken into consideration through the ongoing development of the SDS bylaw review being spearheaded by our interim director of Public Works and Utilities. I would also like to point out that the notification letter for this property, we made a tiny error in the variance percentage. The letter indicated 10% to the 3%. However, we forgot to carry the 4, and it turned out to be 2.07%. The diagram that was sent out, however, accurately reflected the 6-meter dimensions of the lot. We will make sure to send all of our calculations past the CFO from now on, as she is the only one of us who's gone to math school. From the public feedback, we had 3 feedback forms supporting the variance requests and 2 forms, letters opposing the variance requests, and those are on the yellow sheets of paper in your package. At this point, acting mayor, it is appropriate to open the floor to any members of the public who feel that their interests are affected, starting with the applicant.
Applicant of 342 Hollywood present. Stand up, speak your name.
I guess my only question, I don't have access to the 2 people that didn't want this to go through, so I don't know how to speak to them. The main basis for me for the town is that we've got to increase our tax base. The only way that's going to happen at the hop farm is by doing this sort of thing. And the whole question of the percentage, the frontage on that panhandle is kind of obtuse, because you have one section says that I can have a panhandle, which I had spoken to the CAOs about, and they said, yes, you can do that. And then another section saying that it's got to be 10%, which is, you can't do both. So I'm kind of stuck with it, making an application and having to get a variance when I was told that I could get this panhandle. It's in the bylaw that I can have a panhandle, and then to come in with something else and say, well, this technical thing is that you can't do that. It's kind of, I'll say it again, obtuse. And of course, the whole thing about the sidewalk, the whole point of the living on the hop farm is it's semi-rural. Having one sidewalk 6 meters long in the middle of that neighborhood doesn't make any sense. So, but I would love to know what the objections are from the 2 people. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this? Anyone online too, or that we're broadcasting?
If there's any member of the public in attendance who would like to speak, please unmute your microphone at this time and identify yourself.
Okay, hearing none. Is there any questions on council?
As usual, through the acting mayor. I had a conversation with our CAO the other day, just in regards to 2 of us councillors live on the hop farm. So I don't want it to look like we are doing something wrong by voting yay, nay, or whichever way we're voting. And I wonder if you could explain for anybody in the room or online or that's viewing this later, why that would be.
It's in the public interest and there is no conflict.
Yeah. So yes, there is court precedent where there's been questions of conflict of interest when a decision may affect 1 or more members of council. There's a court set threshold. It's 2%, where if you have an interest in common with 2% of the community, then it's considered a common interest, not a conflict of interest. So as neighbors in an area affected by something, there are certainly many neighbors as well around you who have that same interest in that potential change. Population is small. If there weren't such a threshold, council would never make any decision at all, because it all affects some. So it is safe in these instances to presume that the interests are in common.
Thank you, because I was asked and I just wanted it out there for everyone to hear. That's helpful.
So through the acting mayor, this property has, it's an up and down, it has apartment I believe you guys live in the top. There's a rented apartment down below and there's an Airbnb on this property. So I'm just wondering if we start dividing properties, what is the use for a property? Can this property build like a duplex in the back? Or is it an up and down? Again, so currently I feel like there's 3 different families living on this property already. So are we, if they build another house and rent out the basement, that's 5 families living in a property that is basically designed for 1.
Currently in the RR1 zone, a duplex is not permitted. I do believe that this may have been constructed under a previous
was.
zoning bylaw where it was permitted. Therefore, it enjoys legal non-conforming status and may continue until a point where it is either decommissioned or destroyed more than 75% above its foundation. In the current RR1 zoning bylaw, a duplex is not allowed, so a single-family dwelling would be permitted, or perhaps 1 mobile home or 1 modular home. I do believe under the current zoning bylaw, a secondary suite would be permitted in a single-family dwelling, just as it would be in any other zone.
Right.
However, at this time, a carriage house is not permitted, but we are looking at potentially, because of current provincial best practices and the District of Lillooet Housing Needs Assessment, of opening up carriage homes, either or a carriage home or a secondary suite on lots that are at least half an acre when not connected to municipal sewer. So there is a potential that there could be 2 dwelling units on this site.
So there could be 2 dwelling units. Can I ask the property owners if there's another living quarters behind the house? Is there just the 2 and the Airbnb?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's, okay, so there's no other ones?
No.
But they could build, and that would be 5 potential.
On 2 separate properties.
So
On
this
two
is, there's a
separate-
legal non-conforming up
Right.
and down.
Right, because that was part of the
The
SLRD.
Airbnb is not a separate unit, it's a bedroom in the back.
But it still is, it goes to another, whoever, vehicle, traffic, another family potentially staying there if it's for a week or it's rented out on an ongoing basis. I'm just trying to figure out, I've talked to a few people on the hot farm and just tried to figure out like what people do want, and I don't know, it could be a lot. It could be a lot.
Let me just say that the request is to do what the zoning bylaw says and have
I
a
realize
single family house in the back. There's not 5 places.
Mr. Vinegar?
There's-
Taylor, oh my goodness, one of those nights, Dave, Mr. Taylor, sorry.
Through the mayor, at this point, I would recommend going back out to the audience, to the gallery, and seeing if there's anyone else who wishes to speak to it rather than getting into a debate at this time.
Okay.
And then council can address questions to staff and if need be the applicants once everyone's had a chance to speak.
Is there anyone else in the gallery that would like to speak to this, their interests may be affected? If so, please come up to the podium or state your name. And state your name. All right. So I do have a clarification. If Mr. Taylor can please reiterate the septic and the sewer piece of it. Because you had mentioned in the future, potentially there could be a carriage house, but that would only be if they were connected to sewer.
So in the current zoning bylaw, you cannot have a carriage house unless you're connected to sewer. It does not matter, it's municipal water and municipal sewer. It does not matter how big your lot is, or how many septic systems you have on there, thou shalt not. The standard practice manual, which is kind of like the building bylaw for septic systems, has, and the group that put that together has determined that the cutoff for allowing a second dwelling on a property that is on a well and on a septic system is 2.5 acres, 2.47 acres or 1 hectare. And to have a carriage house safely for everyone else, including the property owners, on a lot with municipal water but no municipal sewer is 0.5 acre or 2,000 square meters. So that does not exist in our bylaw at this time, but because that is the best practice that is being suggested to staff by the professionals, we will be looking at integrating that to the new zoning bylaw for council's consideration and for the public consideration.
Is there any more questions for staff? All right, do you want me to read that in full?
You may say as read.
Okay, all right, so can I get or is it a motion on the floor already? Sorry.
There's not.
There's not, okay, so can I get a motion on the floor for the development variance DDP 22-003? Councilor Reid. Councilor Mumble. All right, no more questions or comments. And I call the vote as read. All those in favor? All opposed? It is carried. Thank you. All right, so 12.4 DDP 22-004 for 355 Reynolds Road, variance to frontage requirement and road improvements. Taylor.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. DBP 22-004 is a request to vary the minimum frontage for a panhandle subdivision, as well as a few frontage improvements for an RR1 property located at 355 Reynolds Road. I am not going to say anything more about that because DBP 22-003 was exactly the same as this one, and staff support it with the same rationale and staff recommendations. But again, there was a slight mathematical error in the mail out where we indicated 3%, but it should have read 1.98%. We are considering hiring a tutor, and I believe that there's probably a fifth grader who can show me how to use a calculator somewhere.
Yeah.
As for public feedback, there were 4 in support of the variance, 4 against the disappearance of the variance. That is included in your council agenda package and on the pink paper for any items that was received after your council agenda. At this point, Madam Acting Mayor, it is appropriate to open the floor to members of the public who feel that their interests are affected, starting with the applicant who was not able to attend this evening. Thank you.
Is there a statement from the applicant or no?
No, it's
Okay, so it's open to the floor for members of the public. Janet, state your name, please.
I'm Helen Rowe. I live next door with this property. And that's what was proposed. You can't see what I proposed because it was added to that on the next page, on the same page. So the councilors will have it. Our property was established as a hobby farm 62 years ago. We had water right to the back of the property. We have a full water to the hayloft. We have 2 corrals, pastures, a big shop, chicken coop with the chicken run, animal shelter, like back by the corrals. And our house is situated such that it is in pretty much in the middle of the property, but over towards this side. We were very careful when we bought our property. Took us a long time to find one. We had to be able to rent it. We had to be able to renovate the inside for a son in a wheelchair. That cost us $70,000. If this goes through, it's gonna go right beside our house and our patio and our outdoor kitchen. And this new driveway, these people have 4 vehicles already. There's a row of trees right here. And this row continues. They would all have to be taken out for this to be the required width. Otherwise, it's not wide enough. We start ripping them out, turn this into gravel all the way to the back. our property is essentially destroyed. Because this is a pasture. This is our house. This is our barn. So if you look at what I've submitted, you'll see where everything is, where all the water standards are. We do not use it as a hobby farm. Wool, start that. But we maintain it. We maintain all those things. We just re-roofed, well, we re-roofed, we put all the screw things into the tin roof because it was leaking. We maintain the water system to the back because it can be turned into what it was created as. If this goes through, it's going to destroy the back half of our property and certainly the enjoyment and peace of our house. The reason we looked for so long is our son has a seizure disorder. And he has to have peace. That's not gonna happen if this happens. I know technically that can happen. But it would destroy our property. And if you look at what I've submitted, you'll see that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to this? Okay, seeing none, is there any questions from council to staff? Councilor Hoppo?
I'm really torn with this one because the difference I find with this property and the other property is that this is a single, there's a small trailer on the front of this property and a single dwelling would be on the back of that property. So we're still gonna have like two families and I'm about the traffic going in and out. Can I ask Helen a question?
It's up to the mayor.
Helen, if you were to have, if that property was a go and you say that there's bushes along the driveway there that would have to be, pardon me?
Those are 50-year-old pyramid cedars.
Okay, so is there a way that you could put some sort of retaining on your side to alleviate the dust and still give you privacy on your side of the fence, if they're gonna have to take those 50-year cedars out? I'm just wondering if there's, some way, I know what you're saying and I feel for you, but I'm asking you a question.
I could probably put a 10-foot retaining wall along there. But other than that, it's not realistic, no. There is a fence,
There's a fence.
a 3.5-foot fence, like a chain link fence along there. And certainly I would have to put a really tall retaining wall. Our house is only 20 feet from that fence.
My issue is that I think that we need to be able to free up properties, and I would actually like to see any revenue coming from extra properties go towards the infrastructure that is needed on the hot farm and figure out a way that we could, maybe generate some water and fix some water issues up there. But I'm okay with separating and doing these as long as there's a single family unit. I'm not okay with doubles.
Is there anything, any other comments from council? Sweet.
Through the acting mayor, I guess to Mr. Taylor, who deals with all of these wonderful things, you must have a lovely life to deal with this day in and day out. Is there any other way to panhandle it? I understand the panhandle thing because I live on one of those properties where that could be done as well. But I'm just wondering, does it have to go near their home?
The existing home on the property is built too close to the other property line and it wouldn't be able to fit it in on that side of the property. And does not make sense, and I would not imagine that an approving officer would approve of a hooked parcel, which would be a 6-meter wide panhandle going down the middle, essentially bisecting the two parcels and still calling them the same parcel. That's not great practice, and it does create issues for property owners in the future. With all required sympathy, this could be turned into a driveway regardless of whether it was subdivided or not. The owners could choose to remove their house from the front, build a new house at the back, and do exactly what is being proposed here, with or without a variance.
Great, thank you, that helps. Okay, the only comments that I have, and I meant to actually say it on the other one as well, is that we are in a position in the community that we do need housing, and we know that. And so that is a consideration that I think weighs heavily on all of our minds as well. With that, can I get a mover and a seconder? That's also helpful. And are we ready to call the vote? All those in favor? All those opposed? I guess carried. Thank you. All right, so 12.5 DVP 22-006, 108 Main Street paving requirements. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. DVP 22-006 is a re-application of the variance considered in 2021 under file number DVP 21-005. In accordance with the development procedures bylaw, an applicant may not apply for the same request that was denied by council for a period of 6 months. In council's consideration of DVP 21-005, council approves the siting of the structure, the new awning, along with the removal of the requirement for the oil water separator. Council denied the request to vary the paving requirement. After council consideration to reduce the surfacing requirements for the neighboring property at 104 Main Street, the applicants have opted to apply again to vary the requirements and to leave the drive aisle as crushed gravel or some other material that is not prescribed in the bylaw. The applicant has also expressed concern that the heavy machinery that utilizes the same access at 108 Main Street may damage any paving works. However, the adjacent lot could supply its own access where the paving could be designed for those anticipated loads. Based on the requirements of the zoning bylaw and previous council directions specific on this issue, staff are recommending the DVP 22-006 be denied. For public feedback, there were 2 in support and 1 in opposition, and any that were received after the agenda was published would be on the blue paper supplied to me there. Madam Acting Mayor, at this point, it is appropriate to open the floor to any members of the public who feel that their interests are affected, starting with the applicant.
All right, is the applicant here to speak?
Yes, Brandon McNary. Hello, everyone, Mayor, Council. I'm here today to reapply for this applicant variance for the paving on that property. There is heavy equipment there. It moves around in order to get into the lots and whatnot. They do move around on our lot also, which is part of the agreement with that contractor. As far as paving, everybody knows that paving causes flooding. There's nowhere to dissipate the water, and we live on the bottom of the hill. The properties on the bottom of the hill. The business next to us was relieved of the paving program. It was kind of good for the ganders, good for the goose. We do basically the same thing. The cost of the paving is absolutely incredibly expensive. As you know, gas has gone up twice. Paving has also. I don't know if you guys really realize how much a small business does for the community and what 50 or $100,000 would do for a small business. We won't have any, just to let you know. The upgrading of the building and whatnot, we started doing some landscaping and whatnot. I've also tried to get a hold of some of that paving chips across the river there. I mean that, I don't know where I'm at with that. Haven't got any answers back. And we are working with the neighbors with the brewery there, because they've got a little chunk of land on the riverside of our property that they're starting to monkey with. And I'm also gonna deal with that. It's gonna be kind of a long thing there. It takes time to do this. We can put plants in. We've already started doing that. As far as the paving, I don't think it's right. It's too expensive. And I mean, we're in the far end of town. It's just the way life is. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Over the time, it will become nice, but it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to get some investment and capital to deal with all this shit. And that's all I can say. I don't think it should be paid for a bunch of environmental reasons also, but I'm trying, the dust control we can deal with, whether it's through calcium or trying to get a hold of some of the paving chips, which I'm trying to do already. Okay?
Thank you. And I appreciate the tenacity of coming to reapply and coming back up here and presenting your case. I think that's great. I guess, again, it's the same thing. I would just like to see the plans in the application. And I would be in favor of deferring this till next council when we have a full table again to discuss it. I do believe the next council meeting is July 12th. Where I stand on this as well. I'll open it up to council for comments and questions. Also helpful.
Through the acting mayor, Mr. Taylor, if you could, so last time this business came with a variance permit application. I voted to support the variance. I was outvoted 4-1, but at that time, staff also supported the variance in not having to pave, among the other things. So why now are you denying the variance, supporting the variance, when in the first place you supported it?
Thank you. Through Madam Mayor, first of all, staff don't deny or approve. They only make recommendations based on policy.
Support or non-support?
So this was the first application that had come forward to council to request a variance to paving. It was followed very closely by the one for the brewery. So staff were looking at it without any council direction being given on the item. I believe it may have actually been at the same meeting or shortly after that the brewery came forward. But the reasons that staff were supporting it is we were looking at it in an industrial zone at that end of town, and most importantly, that it was a Part 9 building in the BC Building Code, which is safer than a Part 3 building. There's not the possibility of there being as many people in there. It was very close to Main Street, which meant that firefighting could take place from the street rather than having to maneuver on the site. So for those reasons, and without knowing at that point what staff's feeling, what council's feeling was on it, it seemed appropriate at that time to test the waters and recommend that it be approved. Out of that, staff got some fairly clear direction about where council wanted to go, and that council did deny the application. So that forms the policy going forward. And that's, again, what staff recommends is based off of the bylaws, the direction, and existing policy, not our personal opinions on whether something should or should not.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that answer. It does go to show you, though, that every place is unique when making these decisions, whether they be close to the road or they're a smaller entity or, you know, every place is unique. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from council? I would like to put forward the motion that we defer this in whole, or the staff recommendation, where did the paper go? The staff recommendation 3 refer to staff for other options, so they can go back and speak to the applicant and then bring it back to the next council meeting, where again, we have full council to discuss. Can I get a mover on that? The Reed, seconder. Second that. Call the vote. All in favor? And all against? It's carried. Thank you. All right. Yeah. All right, so we're moving on to DBP 22-007, 341 Main Street.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. DBP 22-007 is for a variance provision, two provisions of the zoning bylaw pertaining to parking area surfacing, oil water separators, setbacks, and commercial loading space related to the repurposing of an existing structure into a multifamily mixed-use building at 341 Main Street. As part of the significant change of use and historic lack of permitting on the existing uses, many zoning and building requirements are being triggered in order to bring this property and structure into compliance with basic fire and life safety provisions. For the loading area, the first request is to vary that requirement. The existing site characteristics do make it difficult to create a loading area. Not that in that there is insufficient room, but mostly because the lot mostly because the drive aisles on the lot do not provide sufficient maneuverability within the location of the existing structure. While the variance request is supportable, staff are recommending that a condition be placed on the permit stating that the variance is only applicable for a Group D occupancy, which is defined as business and personal services in the British Columbia Building Code, as these types of occupancy don't generate the same level of external deliveries as Group E or mercantile retail occupancies would. For the front setback, the existing building is currently sited approximately half a meter closer to the front property line than described in the current zoning bylaw. In order to legitimize the existing structure and allow for building permits to be issued on the encroaching section of the structure, staff are recommending that the variance to the setback be approved. This variance will only stand for the existing structure and will not permit additional encroachments into the front required setback. For the oil water separator, previous direction from council has been to investigate the requirements for an oil water separator in the zoning bylaw. The intent of oil water separators is to protect the environment. That being said, there are already provisions in the BC Plumbing Code for when interceptors are required, and the existing ditch along the frontage should filter out oil prior to entering the greater ecosystem. Staff recommend varying this provision and will continue to investigate removing it or not in the 2022 zoning bylaw rewrite. The applicant is also requesting to not have to meet the surfacing requirements, specifically paving, due to archaeological constraints. As part of all development and building applications, the District of Lillooet undertakes a search of the provincial archaeological database to determine if there are any identified archaeological values present within a property or within 50 meters of the property boundaries. Well, one has been found in proximity to this property that does not preclude that development, including excavation or paving, cannot occur. Many properties on Main Street are within areas of archaeological value, including the fire hall, which underwent a upgrade a couple of years ago and did also have to go through the process. It was not denied that they couldn't pay, they just had to have monitoring on site. The requirements for safe development, however, need to come from the archaeological branch through an archaeological permit under the Heritage Conservation Act. This is not a process unique to this development. 622 Main Street, the 23-unit Wild Rose development across from the City Hall, has also needed to seek approval from the archaeology branch. Staff suggests that a variance to the surfacing requirements in a commercial zone on Main Street is not appropriate. And should the archaeology branch require that paving or other permitted surfacing not occur, its authority under the Heritage Conservation Act would override the district requirements and a variance would not be required. Further, staff caution council about varying paving requirements in commercial zones and for multifamily residential uses. To continue to have gravel and dirt parking area will have a significant impact on the aesthetic quality of Main Street, something which is a key value in the downtown design guide. Staff recommend that the surfacing requirements not be varied and will address the archaeological concerns once a permit has been issued by the archaeology branch. Staff are recommending that the variance be approved with the condition that the commercial uses be limited to personal services occupancies as defined in the BC Building Code, and that the request to vary the surfacing requirements be denied. In terms of feedback, one was received in opposition to the variance for the paving. At this point, it is appropriate, Madam Mayor, to open the floor to anyone who feels that their interests are affected, starting with the applicant or agent.
The applicant here today. Come up and state your name.
I'm working with Nadine Gray to figure out what I'm allowed to do on the property. All I'm trying to do is continue construction while this is taking place because nobody knows how long it will take for the archaeological branch to determine if the original site was ruined when the original building was built in 1982. Because if you look at the lay of the land, they agree with me that a lot of material was taken off site. So they've been searching for older photographs, that type of thing, to determine if there is any value for them. So until I know this, I don't know what I'm allowed to do. I'm not allowed to proceed. I'm not allowed to dig anything. I don't have like a plant and tree plan for you because I don't know what I'm allowed to do. Until they tell me where I'm allowed to dig, I'm not. So all I'm trying to do is continue work. I'm going to have 8 units, which, as stated many times in this conversation, we desperately need housing in this community. And we desperately need office space, which the back portion is going to be a 17-use mixed office space that allows smaller business people a place here to be able to work. That's what I'm doing. If it was simply paving, it would be done. But if it's an archaeological dig that has to happen there, that might price it out of, it might be too expensive.
Mr. Taylor, if I can ask a question. So to staff, do you know the timeline approximately of how the archaeological branch is and any costs associated with it at this time?
I couldn't fathom a guess, but the province is not known for their alacrity.
I'm just curious because I do know that the building across from Municipal Hall actually has already undergone an archaeological study, and I don't think the timeline was that long. So I'm just, I guess for clarity's sake, might help.
I believe the issue with 622 Main Street is they did begin the archaeological process back in October of 2021. I believe they were only able to undergo their assessments recently this spring. I'm not even sure if they've made their permit application to the archaeology branch yet.
We're talking potentially years.
Is there any other, I'll keep to the floor first. Is there any other, anybody in the gallery for comments or questions that may pertain to this property?
How long did it take for the archaeological assessment to occur at the property next to this?
Madam Mayor, at this point, it is appropriate for members of the public to come forward and speak how the variance affects them, not to ask questions.
Okay, just a second.
All right, is there questions from council? It's helpful.
Yeah, so I'm a little, I just need a little bit of clarification. So if the archaeological dig happens within the next, you have no idea, but you've submitted an
So-
application, correct?
We're in the middle of providing the evidence.
Right.
So an archaeological team has looked on the property multiple times
Mhm.
and is in the middle of getting evidence to say that how they feel is there's no archaeological value to the property. But they have to submit that to the province and they're trying to track down enough evidence to submit that. Which then in that case, I will be paving.
Right.
Right? It's a multifamily with 17 offices. I want to pave it. It's just, I can't afford to pave it if, say, I have to dig 8 inches down on that entire property at $40 an hour to have somebody sifting it. That becomes where it's financially unfeasible because I'll simply have to take that cost and add it to the rent. And we need more affordable housing, not less affordable housing.
Right, so if they find nothing, then you're going to pave
Yeah.
it, and if they find something, then the whole deal's off anyways.
Yeah, and nobody can say it has to be done either way.
So
It's
if we
kind of
pass
them.
this, my issue is that this is a commercial property, which is different. I view it differently than I do industrial. It's commercial, everything is paved around it except directly across the street, because I've driven
Yeah.
past and seen what's going on. I mean, today there was a lineup to get into the Friendship Center. There's a lot of food and everything like that. And when you have 8 properties and 18 parking spaces in a gravel area, there's gonna be a lot of dust ongoing.
Exactly why
But
I
if
don't
we
want it.
if we pass this, as staff recommends with the paving, you will still have to wait for the dig results anyways, correct?
This is an odd scenario because if staff allow the building to go forward and we won't be able to issue occupancy until such time as the paving is completed. And if the archaeology branch has no issue with it and then paving proceeds, then we don't have an issue and occupancy will be issued as soon as the parking area is completed. If the archaeology branch doesn't have a problem with it but requires monitoring or some sort of restoration, then that will have to be undertaken. And at which point, if that doesn't want to happen or makes the project unfeasible, then they will have to come and ask for the paving variance again. At which point they've already spent all the money in upgrading the building, which we won't give occupancy for until the zoning bylaw criteria is satisfied.
And God, we already have unbelievable amount of money on this building and we desperately need the homes.
Is there, this is going to sound odd, as usual from Mark. Is there some way to, because I'm in agreement, it's a commercial zone, it should be paved. Is there some way that we can, not to say that the gentleman speaking, saying that if this doesn't happen, he's going to pave, but it's hard to take, can't just take people at their word, because that could take 15 years before it happens. So we have to, is there some way we can put something into the resolution
That is what I'm
to
trying.
reword it so that, yes, if this doesn't happen, it gets paved? Or,
It is not good to treat resolutions or variances which are registered on title like choose your own adventure books.
trying to be nice.
It should be a decision one way or the other. What staff have recommended would allow them to proceed, although we may not recommend they proceed. It would allow them to. If you approve it, it would allow them to proceed. If you approve it with the request to not pave as well, then they would be able to proceed. We would have to give occupancy without any paving, and that would be the end of it. So that is why staff is recommending against the request for paving until we get the archaeological assessment, and then we can touch base again at that time. Everything else was still required to be applied for a variance. So it's not like anyone's out anything over process anyway.
I have an idea.
At this point, it's not particularly appropriate to get into a back and forth. But Madam Mayor, that is up to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so both of you said you don't support commercial. So how about I'm not issued a business permit for the commercial until this is completed? Right, so it allows me to do my residential, and it allows me to bring in some money for all the money that I'm out and provide housing for the community, but I'm not able to get a business permit for my commercial zoning until this is done. So it leaves
So
40% of my building empty.
for clarity, the entire property is classified as commercial because it's a mixed use building. We don't split zoning up on building. And I think what would be worrisome is that if occupancy was approved so you can get residents in there, we have no way to go back if it doesn't get paved in the future. So it's still in council's table. I'm sorry. And sorry, to go back on to the applicant to continue to get paving to issue occupancy on the other half, because you now have residents living there, and because of the Residential Tenancy Act, can't evict them because the district isn't going to give full occupancy to the building. Does that make sense? Sorry, I'm trying to put pieces together.
Yes.
Can I speak on your behalf?
Yeah.
That is actually up to the mayor, not up to the applicant.
We, before we could get occupancy of the greenhouse, we had to make a deposit to the district for paving. Why couldn't he do the same? And
Actually, at this point, I'd like that the public input period is that if you'd like to have a statement. That was specific to COVID regulations that were at the time. Everything was shutting down. The local economy everywhere in the planet was in dire straits, and staff were looking for ways within our limited discretion to be able to allow some business to carry forward, which is what happens with 141 Moran Place and 108 Main Street, is that staff entered into agreements with them that they could operate to be able to survive through the pandemic as long as they came back to apply for a variance at a later date. In hindsight, that may have not been wise for staff to do that. I'm not sure we will use our discretion to be that lenient in the future, and in fact require applicants to come forward to council each and every time. However, the pandemic was, it changed the rules for a lot of things, and it's not appropriate going forward.
I also think it's just fair to point out two different properties, different use of properties as well. And so there's different circumstances, and every DVP, like Councillor Hopeful did say earlier, we look at these on an individual basis. And that's why there's individual applications. Are there any more questions or comments from council? I'd like to get a mover and a seconder on the as read resolution. Councillor Weed. And seconder, Councillor Hopeful. Any more comments? Okay, and I will call a vote. All those in favor? I vote that carried.
This is a tough night.
What was the verdict on that? In the end?
It was
Staff recommendation was moved.
So I'll go 2 years potentially that I can't rent out of place. So how do I carry that?
As staff mentioned to the mayor, the applicant can continue with construction at this point, but occupancy will not be given until the matter of paving has been dealt with and through the archaeology.
yes, so the recommendation would be to the applicant to start the archaeological process and get that moving, continue construction while that's going on. And all right, moving on to 12.7, Z 22-001 zoning amendment bylaw number 2022-013 or site-specific zoning amendment to allow a carriage house. Or Taylor.
Shut down.
Thank you. Z 22-001 is proposing a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment to allow for a carriage home constructed to a well and an on-site wastewater disposal field, and to reduce the setback for a carriage house. As with the last site-specific
Just 1
zoning,
second, Mr. Taylor. I'm sorry, you guys will have to keep it down please, so we can continue on with the meeting.
Mr. Nunzikowski?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move on.
As with the last site-specific zoning request at 101 Horse Creek, this property exceeds the best practice minimum lot size of 2.47 acres, this property being 4.91 acres. To safely have additional septic systems on a property that can be set far enough away from wells both on this property and adjacent properties. Prior to any building permit, the owner would be required to have their system designed by a registered on-site wastewater professional and registered with Interior Health. The rationale for the setback reduction to 9.1 meters from 13.5 meters is to avoid already established non-structural uses on the property, such as access driveways and established gardens and other plantings. This is shown on the applicant's rationale and photographs included in your agenda package. As this site is more than double the size to accommodate an additional septic system safely, and there have been no opposition from neighboring properties at this time, staff are recommending that bylaw 22-013 be read a first and second time and proceed to public hearing. Thank you.
Is the applicant here tonight to?
At this point, it is not appropriate to open the floor. That will be at the public hearing.
All right. I'll put a motion on the table. Councilor Reid, Councilor Hopple, any questions or concerns to staff? Okay, hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, carried. All right, so 12-8, delegation of authority to administer business recovery outdoor extensions 2023.
Thank you. This resolution was passed in 2021 and expired in November of last year. District staff have been approached once again to administer this provision, and staff are of the opinion that one more additional year at this time of economic recovery is supportable. This resolution would delegate to the CAO the ability to approve some patio and outdoor seating extensions that would otherwise not conform with the zoning bylaw temporarily until the end of October 2022. These extensions must be non-permanent and removed by November 15th of this year. The CAO is not obligated to approve any extensions that are not demonstrably justifiable. Any business that does take advantage of this would be explicitly told that this is the last year that efforts around COVID economic recovery can be justified in this manner. And should they wish to continue, they will need to either consolidate lots or rezone properties or apply for temporary use permits and building permits to operate these extensions appropriately. Thank you.
Can I get a motion to move? Councilor Reid, Councilor Hopple. Questions or concerns regarding item? Hearing none, we can call the question. All those in favor? Carried. All right, 12.9, ED.01C, Lillooet privacy policy.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Protection of privacy and personal information is an important and evolving topic in today's data-driven world. The District of Lillooet is also subject to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, which among other things allows records that the district holds to be requested and released. This means that the district needs to be particular about the type of personal information that is collected and ensure that only what is needed is collected and that it is only used for the purpose for which it is collected. The district protects the personal information it collects, uses, and discloses in accordance with FIPA by promoting privacy awareness, application of sound privacy principles, and implementation of reasonable security measures to protect personal information. The policy is going to be the foundation for the district's privacy management program. It sets the framework for privacy to be a central component of the district's business practices and a built-in component of day-to-day program operations. The policy strengthens the district's ability to protect the privacy of individuals' personal information by clearly articulating the roles and responsibilities for privacy management within the district. Policy identifies the mandatory assessment tools and agreements that must be completed by the district, as well as reporting and audit requirements. Policy applies to all district elected officials, officers, employees, contractors, and agents, and applies to personal information that the district collects, uses, or discloses in any form, including verbal, electronic, and written. As part of ensuring that this policy remains up to date with evolving legislation, the district's information and privacy coordinator will, on a regular basis, conduct compliance reviews and audits in order to assess compliance with FIPA, and the policy will communicate results to the Chief Administrative Officer and department heads. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I can say, I believe it was the three of us who sat at OCLA through a very dry session on this. I think we all understand how important it is and what the legislation coming down. So thank you for the report. Do you have any questions for staff on this? Sorry, can I get somebody to move that the district privacy policy ED.01C be adopted? Councilor Hopeful, Councilor Reid, call question, all those in favor? Carried. All right, so item 13, work in progress update. Mr. Vandegar.
Yeah, then.
Okay, all right. Any comments or questions about item 13? And so I'm going to move right that the work in progress as of June 3rd, 2022, we received confirmation. Read. Hopeful, all those in favor, carried. All right. Section 14, we have a notice of motion submitted. Right. Not sure if that got followed up on. Okay. Save it. Okay. All right. All right. Item 15, report from acting mayor. Okay, you know what? Can I? Okay.
Yeah, we're never going to bring some money.
It was the council, the mayor was supposed to bring forward.
We will bring it forward as a motion at the next meeting, as if it were a notice of motion, working with mayor to bring it forward with his discretion.
Okay, I wasn't sure where that was going. It's no, it's not. Thank you for clarity. Okay. Night, skip item 15 and then just do our report as we regularly do them.
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, so we're gonna start with reports from counselors. So item 16, Counselor Hoppel, get organized.
Okay, so May was a lot quieter for me than April. May 16th, we had the Lillooet Community Fund meeting, and as stated in the agenda, the 3 applicants, Historical Society and the Do It Sports in the Chamber, I will happily take all their money and disperse it, or I'll just take the historical one and the other 2 can be picked up at the district office, whatever works. So, and that was pretty much it for meetings. But I did want to say, I had a lot of seniors come in about these phone call scams. So I just wanted to say that I know it's an ongoing issue, especially involving the seniors. So I've talked about this before, but I wanted to mention it again. Frank and I, we have TELUS phone services, so we were getting a lot of calls, and so we put on call control through TELUS. It's free. And what it does is if somebody calls our house now, it'll be prompted to, they will be prompted to manually enter a number like 5. And by adding this feature, it prevents all those scams that are robotic callers from calling through. It is so great. I never get any of them. None of them anymore. So that's awesome. And often they say, you know, oh, we have a parcel at the border and we're now looking for you because you're under arrest. You know, and I can hang up. Well, actually, I've gone through and I've pressed that number and I'm like, hey, and then they've swore at me and hung up, but whatever. But you know, seniors, they're so vulnerable. And, you know, if you know of somebody out there or you were vulnerable or anybody else, tell them about this call control, because like I said, it's free, it's easy. I think you can get it on your cell phones too. It's a way to go for sure. And I just wanted to remind people about property tax notices for the homeowners grant. Hope I'm not taking this away from Mr. Deniger and his announcement, but I just wanted to, because I applied for our homeowners grant online. It was super easy. You just have to have your tax notice. They ask you for your number at the top, couple numbers at the top. So it's easy, but again, you have to either phone in or you have to apply online. You cannot do it at the district office. So that's it for me. Thanks.
I realized I had all my notes in the back of the paper I had in hand, so thank you for going first. And thank you for the reminder about the homeowners grant. I still need to do that. All right, May 17th, I attended the East Lillooet Memorial Garden reopening, and it was absolutely amazing. There was a huge turnout, and the organizers were wonderful, speakers were wonderful, and obviously it's been fully covered in the newspaper, so I won't go on about it much more. May 13th, I had a local government policing roundtable. The next one is scheduled for June 17th. It sounds like we'll be doing once a month, and we are going to go through all the individual points of that special report. And also on May 13th, the CAO and the aquatic supervisor and I met with the school district treasurer secretary, Trudy Rasmussen, and we were looking to glean some insight about school district budgets, and if there was an appetite for the school district to become a partner with the District of Lillooet regarding our swimming pool. And we learned that the individual schools are much more in control of their expenditures than the actual school board. So that was interesting, although she was fully in support of what we were trying to accomplish. She said to go back to local and speak with them. So I sent out a letter to all of the principals in the community. And I did hear back from the principal of Lillooet Secondary School, Mike Singer. Thank you. And then on May 30th, both the CAO and I met with him and Dave Rempel to continue to talk about bringing swimming lessons into their phys ed programs. So we are in discussion. There's no promise of that yet, but the interest seems to be peaked, and they are going to speak with our aquatic supervisor to see what that is going to look like. And if we can, for the fall opening, if what we would like to do is try and have it open in tune with the high school semester system to continue on building up that programming and that lifeguarding. So that's kind of what they're speaking to. And then for my role going forward, I am going to continue to advocate to explore more options for what we've dubbed, thanks to Senator, the coalition of funders, until such time that the next council and recreation staff can put together a budget that emulates the public's support for our community pool. As I mentioned, the aquatic supervisor will be planning for the next opening. And so if there are programs that the public would like to see incorporated, now would be the time to speak with her. And then also during that meeting, I brought it to the school district's attention that it would be really nice to see the school district incorporate more of the recreation facilities in the building as a whole, whether it be skating, the climbing wall, the weight room, that sort of thing. And so we're kind of threw the idea out there once their next year's teacher roster was fully nailed down, that maybe because teachers are in planning for the programs, that we could bring those teachers down and have a full tour of the recreation center, because we know some of those teachers are new and they don't necessarily know what the facility has to offer. So just trying to get more bodies and more involvement from the community that way. And the only thing else I have to speak to is tomorrow, as most of the community knows, there is going to be a Pride Parade event through Main Street and down at Downton Park, thanks to Holly Desovitz for organizing, and the LSS Pride Council and Soji Alliance crew. I was able to reach out to the Minister of Municipal Affairs, Nathan Cullen, and our federal MP, Brad Biss, who, although couldn't attend, they did send along their support and how those things to play for council.
Hi, I'm Nathan Cullen, I'm the Minister for Municipalities and Mission Immigration for BC government. I want to take a quick moment to send out a shout out and a thanks, huge congratulations. Now,
Hi, I'm Brad Biss, Member of Parliament for Mission Matsqui Fraser Canyon. Happy Pride Month. Thanks for inviting me to your celebration in Lillooet. Thank you to the Lillooet Secondary School students for organizing this event. Your leadership on inclusivity and making a stand against bullying is inspiring to those both younger and older than you. This year's theme, Celebrate the Freedom to Live Authentically, is a powerful call to be true to ourselves. There is a lot of pressure to be who others want you to be, especially in high school, and conformity may seem like the easiest path. But ultimately, there is nothing easy about it. We are blessed to live in Canada, one of the most diverse and accepting nations in the world. But we know it has not always been this way, and that we still fall short. There is more to be done to ensure equality and increase the acceptance of all Canadians. To all those celebrating Pride this month, stay safe and have fun. Rock the free world.
Mr. Taylor. I just wanted to give an update. I
Taylor.
heard- Taylor, sorry. It's one of those nights. To give an update on the event tomorrow, there will be, I've heard over 100 participants in the parade. Our MLA Jackie Tiger is coming. We have folks from Interior Health that have marched, and I do believe our own fire truck will be in the parade as well. So that commences at 10 o'clock. Thank you for that.
Okay. You're a hard act to follow. I have no videos. And on May 12th, I attended the AGM and the regular meeting of Gold Country. And as everything else that I do, I'm now their secretary. So, and for the new board until October at least. We did decide that Gold Country would join the Lillooet Chamber of Commerce. And we've also enrolled in their, through the Chamber of Commerce, benefit package for 2 of our employees. So hopefully that will help with retention of employees for a nonprofit society. On May 16th, I attended the opioid forum here at the rec center. I learned a lot about the Oak Clinic, and there was a lot of things that I thought through, I don't like to call it gossip, but through misinformation from others and whatnot. It's actually, the clinic has been a great success, and they have 22 full-time persons enrolled in there that are actually carrying forward with the life that I'm sure the parents all wish they could have had right from the beginning. So it was great, and I know there was an article follow-up from Dr. Miller in Lillooet News. So it really, like I say, it was very enlightening. On May 19th, I attended the NEDIC committee meeting online. Thought we were done doing that. There was a delegation from the chamber, which Johannes is doing a wonderful job. I just want to embrace that young man. There was an information report on exactly what we heard tonight, and I am still confused about this service establishment. I'm for it, but not for the tax part, so I don't know, hopefully we can come up with something else. And other than that, there was another one of these grant money, returning grant money that was to be spent on exploring the Hellymore Heritage Site. So I've seen this more and more. And so I'm kind of wondering, I know there was a write-up about self-ready projects and, you know, applying for all these grants and whatnot, but I'm thinking time consumption and how you get the grant, but now you don't have the staff to move forward with what you wanted to do. So now the grant money goes back. So I don't know, it's kind of a hard one that I'll leave staff up to handling. May 25th and 26th, I was included in the open, closed, and committee of the whole of the SLRD. There was a delegation once again. I think every year we have one from Geoscience BC, and this was about research near Mount Cayley. We also had a delegation from Woodfibre LNG, and that was in regards to stakeholder relations, and hopefully they're spending more and more time with our Indigenous folks to get projects happening near Squamish. Other than that, it was a lot of housekeeping, like I say, returning of grant money that staff had spent the time applying for that just didn't have the power to move forward. And other than that, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I was going to get a hold of Mr. Oiki and ask him if I could ride in the fire truck with him because I can't do the walk. And then I thought, oh, I don't know how high that fire truck is. And I had a vision of poor Darren Oiki trying to push me up in there. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll just stand on the sidelines. unless we have a ladder, which my husband did say, the fire department should have a ladder, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think we're gonna go there. I'll just stand on the sidelines. And I would really like to commend poor Councillor Leach for the position she was put in today as acting mayor. This has been one meeting that I don't want to say I'm glad it was you that had to chair it, but I'm really glad it wasn't me, and you did a wonderful job on short notice. That's it.
All right, 17, report from the state.
You're right, Chair. A few updates today. We'll go through each department. Corporate and Development Services, Council on Public No permissive tax exemptions. Qualified properties are being accepted until July 29th. Sure. That's exemptions for things such as nonprofit organizations. Their taxes cut down a little bit, so it's an annual process. It's advertised on Facebook and our website as well. Forms to be got from City Hall. For finance, utilities were due last Friday. If you missed that deadline, you now have a 10% penalty applied to utilities. Unfortunately. Property taxes, you still got time for that to get them in by July 4th. And as I mentioned before, homeowner grants do need to be claimed through the province. And the recommendation is to look into that before July 4th. Fire department, a lot of updates on the fire department. 8 members completed first responder training in April. It's fantastic. The structure protection unit, which they just call the SPU, the structure protection unit trailer is about 95% complete. It's been ordered, the majority has been received, and the final preparations will be organized the trailer so that it is ready for wildfire season, which I hope is until 2023. 2040 or never. Replacement self-contained breathing apparatuses. These are both water ones, not the scuba ones. The cylinders have been purchased, received, and replaced into service. Beginning June 15th, the district will be launching the District Fire Smart project. This will be done through a local contractor in collaboration with the fire department. They'll be examining 19 critical infrastructure sites in different neighborhoods will all be assessed. The data collected from this will help support the district in moving the actual fire smart programming, outreach, training, things that come with that. Better. Emergency management, also under Mr. Lucky's hat, it's many hats. By the end of this month, we'll be wrapping up the joint EOC ESS training program. It's Emergency Operations Center and Emergency Support Services training program, which started in November 2021. This program included 15 different training deliveries involving all Northern Scotland communities, volunteer members from the SLRD, and of course the district. Also from emergency management staff, we're waiting to hear back from UBCM from on the 2022 EOC capacity building grant fund. So a lot on the go. Also under Mr. Oigie's hats, his third one, I think, bylaw enforcement. Our previous bylaw officer, Jennifer Davidson, did resign effective May 24th. She was on leave for 6 months to attend personal family matters, during which time we had Sam Seidel on contract to assist with bylaw enforcement. And I'll be advertising as of tomorrow morning to fill that bylaw officer role on a basis. Okay, go ahead. Recreation, I think acting mayor stole most of what I had to say about recreation, which is a lot about the pool. So I can reiterate that yes, the pool's programming has been increasing steadily. The interest has been increasing. We're seeing a lot of momentum there. The previously planned closure, it was last mentioned by Mr. Van Geer in his very last meeting here, is planned for the end of this month. We've looked at that and we're moving it to August to allow us to continue with the training of lifeguards. We got some 5 lifeguards who be trained up this month. Just the programming is really taking off, so we wanted to capture that interest that's been growing to try to become self-sufficient as a community for lifeguard aquatics programming. Trying to pull people from England or struggles. So August 1st, we hope to close the pool. It's annual maintenance. It will also involve repainting of the pool, the color blue one. I just thought it was white. Apparently the water's not blue, the paint is blue. And then we hope to reopen the pool early to mid-September in alignment with school programming, which we spoke about. And as was mentioned as well, we're trying to work more closely with other organizations in our community and next to target neighboring Indigenous communities to try to align our programming with their needs, to offer up all the plethora of things that we have in this recreation facility, could have in this facility, to really liven it up, especially after shutdowns during COVID health restrictions. My final comment related to that, now that we're recovering from those restrictions from COVID, the rec center will be opening on Saturdays again, starting this weekend. Just published in the paper that we're not open on weekends, but correct that, yes, come on in on Saturdays. So we're starting with just 5 hours on Saturday and we'll increase those hours based on. That's my.
Thank you, Mr. Dagger. So on to new business, 18.1, we're pulling services wildfire petition letter, sort of away.
Okay. So in this letter, I just wanted everybody to know that the response by the Minister of Natural Resources was that basically the federal programs will continue to advance forest management, adaptive practices, and support wildfire preparedness and response, a critical part towards building disaster resilience, thriving environments, strong economies, and improved public health outcomes. So the budget for 2022 proposed additional actions to counter the growing threat of wildfires in Canada by investing $383 million over 5 years in training and employment, supports for the community-based wildland fires, and in the firefighting equipment and capacity. Investments will include $269 million over 5 years to strengthen provincial and territorial capabilities, and $39.2 million over 5 years starting in 2022-2023 to support the purchase of firefighting equipment by First Nation communities. And in addition, budget 2022 proposes $176 million over 11 years starting in 2022-2023 to deliver and operate a new wildfire monitoring satellite system. So while I know that my little petition did not spearhead all of this, I'd like to think that it was a voice at a federal level that BC communities be heard and have better forest management, wildfire protection. So I wanted to thank Brad Biss and also to George and Karen Vanderwolf and their staff for collecting the signatures for my petition. Many more than 25 people signed, but we only needed 25 to actually put the petition in the House of Commons. So that's it. I just wanted to make sure that people knew that there was a voice to be heard. And thanks to you, Fire Chief Derek Wakey, for your help in doing all that. Appreciate it.
Can we receive both of them at the end? Okay. Councilor Reid, 18.2, the Indigenous Steering Committee letter.
I had a couple of questions on this, actually, when I saw it. Do we have a representative on? Am I missing something? Do we have a representative on the Lillooet Indigenous Court Steering for?
Funny you should ask. That was the motion that we were coming on about earlier. The notice of motion is that yes, Mayor Bussey is actually was appointed by council as the representative way back when,
Okay.
late last year. And that's what we're likely doing to change that representative. Yes, the mayor has been acting as representative.
Oh, okay. I was curious because I don't remember getting any reports or anything about it. So I did sign up to go just because I was curious if we had a representative or what it was about or what was going on. So that was all I needed. Thank you.
So I do think, so yes, Mayor Bussey has given a couple snippets in his
Yeah.
news report about it. And I think he will be seeking somebody else as that notice, his motion to sit on it. I do know Councillor Howe has an interest but as for this particular event, I think it's open to all who are interested. I will be there as well. I think Councillor Howe is planning to attend it as well, so.
Terrific. That is all I wanted to know about it. Thank you.
Can I make the motion to have, I want to make a motion to receive, is that? Yeah, Councillor Lee, Councillor Hopple, all in favor? Carried. 19, media and public question period. The meeting is open for questions from the media and public. You ready? One words, blue face, all right. You just go to 20 now. I need to, yeah, okay, so item 20, the closed session. So request a resolution that the meeting of the District of Willow Council be closed to the public pursuant to Community Charter Provisions, Section 91C, labor relations and other employee relations, and 91F, law enforcement. If the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the conduct of an investigation under or enforcement of an act. Hoover, Council Weed, Council Hopple, question, all those in favor? Carried. All right.